Hello and a happy new year. I took the time to record the Taron mine today, so we can go over that. The basic squad is similar to the one we used for the iron mine, but there's a couple of key differences. One is that we bring Perfumer. Perfumer specifically and not any medic. This is because we explicitly need Perfumer to deal with the boss effectively. And the second difference is that we will also bring Jaye rather than any additional caster for the damage. This is because there are certain stages that require a melee operator, and we need a really strong one. With a bunch of buffs, any melee operator will do, but if we don't get any buff, Jaye becomes the only option. We can't really rely on what random operators we get, so we're kind of forced to bring Jaye because of that. The first 3 stages are really no different from the Iron Mine. You deploy stuff, they shoot stuff, you win. However, after the 4th stage, the difficulty starts to scale up a lot higher than the Iron Mine. It culminates in the 7th stage, which is just the stage from hell. It's without a doubt the hardest stage in SSS, I think. We'll go over it more once we actually get to it. Now, unlike the Iron Mine, we actually need more melee operators. We're going to need defenders later, because there are stages that have multiple lanes at once, and we can't have Shao just cover every lane. We can pudding it and show one lane, but not 3 lanes. This is mostly for the last 2 stages. Before that everything is manageable, but the last 2 stages are just a huge clusterfuck. So we often have resets if we don't get the right operators. If I don't have any defenders on the last 2 stages, I basically can't clear them, because I need some melee operators to fight. It's also helpful if we get multiple medics, though in this case we had no such luck, and we just kind of went through the whole run with Perfumer. It's also worth noting that physical is a bit better in the Taron mine. In the Iron Mine it's kind of useless, but there's a bunch of stages where you have high res, low defense enemies, so physical works fine. Physical is also fairly effective against these crabs. Even though they have high defense, it's a flat resistance and they have very low health, so if anything goes over their defense they die really quickly, whereas res it's a percentage, so they barely take any damage from it, regardless of how high the R's damage is. Vanguards are fairly valuable because the last 2 stages are a huge rush where you need to deal with big waves early on. The 3rd stage kind of looks like it has multiple lanes, but they all converge on 1 square, so you can just treat it as if it's only 1 lane. The Lancers can be a bit annoying if you don't have a defender, but you can just shoot them while they circle around, so they're not really a problem. We also made sure to bring Indigo specifically, and that is for a single stage, namely LT-7. I'm really not confident I can do it remotely consistently if I don't have Indigo in my squad, because there's a lane we kind of have to leave open so we can fight comfortably, otherwise we lack DPS. Because Ethan has a ton of attack speed, he has a 100% bind uptime, as long as he doesn't miss the bind. When he's paired with Indigo like this, she actually loses DPS because of Ethan, because she cannot attack targets that are bound. So it's very important, if you have them both in a squad, in SSS, to not use their skills together most of the time, because she might just lose DPS then. You get damage from the dot on Indigo's skill, but the majority of the skill's damage comes from the increased attack speed she gets from it. So it's better to cycle Indigo and Ethan skills rather than use them together to maximize the DPS. We're on to the 4th stage. This one is a bit harder than the Iron Mine version of it, because you have invisible enemies and the 3 block dudes, and those invisible enemies start doing a lot of damage, which might force you to bring a medic you don't want. You don't really want to deploy a medic if you can help it, you'd rather have more DPS ops down, especially for killing these dudes. I still don't have a defender here, so I have no way of blocking the 3 block dudes, so we're just relying on binds to kill them. A big reason why the Taron mine is so much harder than the Iron mine is because it requires melee operators to clear. You ultimately get a very big squad of around 26 operators by the last stages. So you need certain operators for certain purposes, and it's very difficult to make sure you get them all in the correct order. If you get a bad hand and don't get things in the order that you want, you may lack DPS, lack healing, lack blocking, and just die because you didn't get all of your operators in the right order. Even if you have all the tools you need to actually clear the stage, you can still die if you get, for example, a bunch of high cost operators and then no vanguards and no block. Unfortunately, there's no way to actually make your deck thinner in this mode. You always must start with exactly 14 operators. If you don't have 14 operators in your squad, you can't start the mode. You don't have the option to not pick any operator. Even if all of the options are garbage, you still have to take one. So you always end up with a bloated deck by the end of the run, where you have a bunch of trash you don't care about. You have the exact same problem in the Iron Mine, but in the Iron Mine it's less notable, because the stages aren't as much of a rush. LT-6 is the only real rush stage on the Iron Mine, and that's by far the hardest stage there. Whereas on this one you have a bunch of stages that you get rushed on, not just one. I kind of got lucky this stage that I didn't get the stun bug. Its damage is actually fairly high and it will probably kill my operators without a medic before they can kill it. The 3 equipments we got from the bonus enemies here are pull 2 cards from our deck and recycle twice and recycle from the graveyard once. I like recycling from the graveyard because it lets you know what's in your graveyard. For example, you can use 2 snipers, then use that card, and then you have 4 snipers. When you pull cards from your deck, you don't really know for sure what you get. It kind of has equivalent value to that device, where that gives you 2 stacks of an operator. This is the 5th stage. It's a bit nasty because of the lane with crocodiles. You get other enemies there as well. Jai can solo all the crocodiles, but there's also a chance that you get one of those regenerating shield dudes that are super tanky, and Jai cannot kill them without a ton of buffs. They don't always spawn, it's based on RNG. It is possible to set up some operator, like Cutter with a bunch of buffs to kill the Iron Guards or have a caster there, but frankly that's a pain in the ass. If I get one of the regenerating enemies, I just reset until I don't get it. Because what enemies you get is randomized per stage attempt. You don't have to reset the whole run to change the stage, change what enemies you get. You just need to retry the stage again, and you get a different enemy spawn. So because one of the enemy spawns here is way harder than the other one, I just reset until I get the good one, which is all crocodiles. And even if he doesn't have a bunch of buffs, Jai can deal with them, because they have extremely low defense, so he heals for a ton. Perfumer was only deployed to heal Shao a bit, since she was missing a bit of health. Jai doesn't need any help, especially since he has a couple of buffs already. It's faster to kill the crocodile and leak the red shield guard, but I was kind of annoyed at it because the run before this, I actually died to the shield guard because I couldn't kill it in time. I didn't have good DPS on the right side. So I just killed him out of sheer annoyance. If I have multiple options for 4 stars, I will always pick the supporter. They kind of help you decked in, because they draw a card, so they don't really add to how bloated your deck is, the way other operators do. The same logic probably applies for higher rarity too. If you don't have anything you need, it's best to pick a supporter, because they don't bloat your deck. They're skinny. This is the easiest of the last 3 stages by far. It's just a single lane, you deploy all of your AoE and slow operators in a corner and they shoot everything. And Shao basically murders everything here. I didn't get Shao, so I'm stacking defense buffs. It's a bit uncomfortable that I only have Perfumer as a medic, because she cannot heal Quora on that tile. So I'm hoping I get Shao before Quora gets pressured too hard. But between Shiryuki, Itan and Pudenko, nothing can really reach Quora, so that won't end up being a problem. Quora can tank the Angry Boys even during when they have like a level 20 difficulty. He just needs to use the shield. Though that only lasts for 30 seconds, which is why we're hoping to draw Shao. We pulled out our entire deck and we finally got her. We left Pudding in the deck because it's better to set up Indigo here, because we're going to need to kill a couple of big enemies. So I gave all the buffs to Indigo for the single target damage. She also pairs really nicely with Itan. They can just completely freeze enemies by cycling their skills. This looks scary, but we only need to kill one more shield guard, and we can then decode the other enemies. Bob is a 1 life enemy, despite being a boss. That being said, I have enough to see that I don't need to do that, and I can just kill them. Yay for Indigo. Okay, we're here, the Nightmare Hell stage from Hell. I fucking hate this stage, it's absolutely disgusting. You get a really fast rush of very tanky enemies, and you have like 8 of them, so you can't even block them properly. And then after that, you start getting attacked from 2 different lanes that are difficult to converge into one set of operators. You have Lancers running at the top, so you need a defender blocking them, and you have a bunch of small fast enemies at the bottom and defense crushers. All the enemies at the bottom lane do really high damage, so nothing but a dedicated defender can even hope to tank them. I misspoke, the bottom lane has demolishers, the guys that do AoE damage and hit, rather than the guys that stun, which are worse because it denies you range tiles. If you choose to block them, that is. Most of the times I try this stage, and it probably took about 30 tries until I get a winning run. I basically have just die at this point. I don't have the right tools to survive the club guys that come up, and like 3 of them just leak and kill me. Or I leak 2 of them and then I leak some other random enemy. The opening is really disgusting, because you have a really short time to set up the DPS to kill those dudes. And unless you have good vanguards, you might not even get enough DP to do it at all. This stage is a big reason why I pick Cutter, because if I don't get Itan, Cutter can also have enough damage to do it. If she gets 4 different buffs for attack and attack speed, she has enough damage to clear on her own. But I also then need a defender, and it cannot be Matterhorn. Matterhorn cannot tank those dudes, even at the start of the stage he's too squishy. It has to be Quora. Or I need to get Matterhorn and a medic. And you can already see how that really limits what potential operators I can bring on this. I can start with, which is why I ended up resetting it on this stage. Way more than I did on the boss stage. We have only 1 medic in a deck of 20 plus operators, so it's really unreliable when we get to draw them. I got really lucky here and finally got the medic in time, otherwise Quora would have just died to scratch damage. If I had Gummy instead of Matterhorn, this would have looked better, because Gummy actually scales with attack buffs, so I can feed her guards to make her tankier. But if I cannot choose Gummy over something like Quora, Quora is essential. I need a hard defender for the last stage. The wave with all the Lancers where Quora nearly died and only survived by the lucky medic pool was the actual hard part of the stage. That's where I almost always die, after I survived the early part. This one looks scary, where you get a ton of tanky enemies coming. But first, look, these are less enemies that you had at the start of the stage. They're just 6, at the start you had 8 of those. And here you have all of your DPS and stow and defender setup. So the ending is basically easier than the first wave. This stage just has really messed up waves. It makes no sense. You get less enemies on the last wave than on the first one, basically. And then I just leak this dude because he'll take forever to die and I can't be bothered. Fuck this stage. Okay, final boss stage, and then I never have to play this shit again. Utage was a mistake here. I should have picked Gravo instead. I can't really get any value out of Utage because the boss just shuts her down completely, so I might have just brought Utage for the cheaper buff. Either way, it's not too critical. The ranged buffs are the important ones. I also have a bit of difficulty starting on this stage, but it's not as bad as LT-7. I can get to the later waves about half the time. I think I took 5 attempts at this stage to beat it. Maybe it was less. Anyhow, we just need to set up Pudding with a bunch of buffs, Eaten with a bunch of buffs, and then we have mostly everything handled. Same as most other stages, except you technically have to deal with 3 lanes. There's a few enemies that go on the bottommost part of the stage and go to where Doberman is from that lane. It's usually 3 crocodiles or 1 crocodile and 2 avengers. If you don't leak anything else, you only need to kill one of them, and then that lane doesn't need to be defended anymore. Which is what will happen in this run. We'll kill the first crocodile, the first avenger, and then we'll just leak the other ones, because we can't be bothered to fight them. Another reason why I needed Indigo here over anyone else is because she's efficient at killing the boss. I need single target damage so I can kill the boss in time. Otherwise, he might just kill me. Especially because I have a single medic, I didn't get any other medics. And the boss does something like 3500 damage or more. Now, the boss has a dot, whereas he moves close to operators, he starts damaging him. You can see the health bars moving a little. This is why Perfumer is here, because we end up stalling the boss on these tiles in front of Pudding for a while. And if we don't have Perfumer, we could just die here, because we'll run out of health on Pudding. That's why we specifically need Perfumer over any other operator. We can use a different medic under some conditions, but it always brings trouble. For example, if we use Pure Stream or Chestnut, who have a long range, they can cover both the... They can cover Pudding and Quora, for example, but if we move, we have to move Shao tile forward and such. It's not ideal. We have some attack speed buffs on Perfumer, otherwise her healing wouldn't be enough. And also an attack buff. I think I put Doberman in her. After Jaya kills the Avenger, we're all set. We don't care about that lane anymore. We have the Eaten Pudding Show set up for the other lane. And we basically have a 5-block defender ready for the middle, so nothing's going to leak. Overall, a much easier stage in LT-7. Once you survive the opening, the boss is the only real threat. The boxers have super high damage, which is why I don't use the defender to block them. Basically, they can nuke anything that doesn't have 1000 or more defense. That's too many defenders, I can't afford it, so we just show them. For some reason I replaced Jaya with other operators. It didn't matter, nothing else can even touch an Avenger. Once they go under 50% HP, they murder everything. But it doesn't matter because there's only 2 enemies in that lane, so we lick them both, we kill everything else, and then the boss is the only one that's left. He might be a bit of a problem if we had some other caster like Grey, Gitano or Shiryuki. Yes, Shiryuki is a caster, instead of Indigo. But because Indigo can stall the boss so hard, we kill it before it ever poses any threat. The hard part about this stage is that the boss can reduce your DPS a lot by constantly stunning operators, but as long as you can clear the DPS check anyway, the enemies themselves are not that difficult. There is no ranged enemies, and you effectively only have to deal with 2 lanes plus 1 enemy. And that's it. I am never touching this thing again.